Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here with us. I'm Jacopo Bencini from the Italian Climate Network, and we are streaming this session. Well, actually, I am speaking to you from inside COP26. We are extremely proud and honored to be hosted by the European Union for this, I hope, interesting side event we're having this afternoon together with experts and activists from Europe and all over the world. The title of this session today will be 9 years left, bringing in young European and global voices. First of all, an introduction of who we are and why we're actually doing this thing and why we did propose this side event to the European Union. Italian Climate Network is a youth-led, science-based civil society organization. Our main goal is to reinforce the fight against climate change in Italy through education and awareness raising. ICN, Italian Climate Network, is also part of the UNFCCC YANGO and Women and Gender official constituencies. This side event happens as part of a wider European project called SPARK, which is a 4-year EU-funded DEAR project on climate awareness, mobilization, and dissemination of how climate change issues are interrelated with international development and gender policies. The SPARK consortium is made up of several EU-based organizations, and I would like, of course, to thank all our partners all over Europe for helping us in organizing this side event and this moment together this afternoon. I would also like to introduce and say thank you and welcome to this side event to our wonderful speakers this evening. Rebecca Heuvelmans from Women Engaged for a Common Future, WECF, as well as Mavuto Kambochola-Banda from Malawi, PhD student on climate change and development activist. And as you can see, we also have with us two very important speakers today from Belfast, Northern Ireland. It's Molly Hughes and Terna Hoy. The title of this session, with the 9 years left, refers to the 2030 goals we are setting as communities, as states, to fight the climate crisis, and in terms of international goals, which have been proposed as well all over the past years and during this COP, which is 24 to 48 hours to end. We still don't know. So the guiding question for this side event can be, what have I done in the last 9 years? How can I see the next 9 years ahead of me, thinking about how did I live my last 9? As countries and multilateral institutions are investing political capital in 2030 climate targets in this COP, perhaps, well, global youth stresses the urgency to act now on issues affecting them: mitigation, adaptation, support to developing countries, climate finance, gender and development issues. This event will also, in its final part, connect COP delegates and people who are watching from home to the world's largest climate march, which is something we developed together as a consortium as part of the wider SPARK project I just mentioned. So we're starting with myself. 9 years ago, I was attending university. I was a university student, and to be honest, I knew not much about climate change. Then everything happened, with the mass protests and the movement and Fridays for Future. And now there is actually a huge public attention on climate policies, and that's something that it's changed all over the past years. In this sense, every awareness and dissemination project that we could actually implement on the ground as civil society, together with schools, together with activists, together with other organizations, are extremely key in promoting this kind of awareness raising and participation for young people as well. As I said, as Italian Climate Network, we work with schools. We try to organize moments where young people can actually engage with policymakers, with decision makers in Italy and in Europe. This year, there have been two very important processes in terms of youth participation as part of the wider UNFCCC process and as part of what is happening inside here at COP26. The first youth track, let's say, it's the usual conference of youth, COI 16 this year, that happened just 2 weeks ago. To be honest, being inside here at COP26 since 2 weeks, I completely lost any sense of time and space, but I'm quite sure it's been 2 weeks ago. And during the Conference of Youth, which is a bottom-up, self-organized initiative, youth from all over the world ask governments to take bold actions towards 2030, and not just towards 2050, 2060, and 2070, as many countries are actually proposing. The other youth track we've seen in 2021 is a complete new initiative launched by the Italian government, actually, which was called Youth for Climate. Through Youth for Climate, 400 young people from all over the world, a male and a female from every country under the UNFCCC, had the opportunity to gather first online during the summer and then physically in Milan at the end of September to draft some proposals, to draft a manifesto to be presented to the ministers of the pre-COP. And this experiment with young people not only has been so successful that the manifesto was presented to the ministers in Milan, but it was presented to delegates and ministers once again here in COP26 as well. The two processes are quite converging in terms of ambition. And in the Youth for Climate manifesto, I think it's noticeable that young people from all over the world asked countries, states, governments to actually phase out from any fossil fuel by 2030, which could be heard as something impossible to implement, actually, in terms of current policies. And we have to say thank you to these young people for bringing this ambition again on the table, because I was there as ICN, we were there, and we saw how difficult from time to time it was for politicians and ministers from all over the world to engage with these young people after they made such strong propositions and ask in the manifesto. Youth for Climate and Conference of Youth converged into COP26. It's been plenty of events on how these recommendations can actually bring more content and actually steer negotiations inside here in Glasgow. And there's some good news if they get confirmed. According to the latest drafts we've seen circulating, it would be the first time ever that a COP decision, which is the political umbrella decision covering the topic-specific decisions under COP26, mentions these two processes. And the processes are not just mentioned, not even just welcomed, but appreciated. This is the wording we are seeing in the drafts right now. And having governments from all over the world appreciating requests and asks of that kind, it's definitely a big win for young people from all over the world. But we can do more every day. And as Italian Climate Network, we promised ourselves to devote every side event. We had another one, a UNFCCC side event last week, and this side event here today as well, to actually leaving space to youth activists, experts, and young people from all over the world. So I would stop here for now. I will continue by moderating this session, and I will leave the floor to one of our speakers and friends today, Rebecca Hövelmans, to kickstart this conversation before hearing from the others as well. And don't forget, you can actually send questions and interact with us during this panel through the platform, and I will read the questions and read them during the second round. Please, Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Hi, perfect. Thank you all. Thank you for having me, first of all, very honored. So last week, I marched with over 40,000 people in the climate march in the Netherlands. And just looking around while I was marching, it was clear to me who was leading the march. It was youth. We at Women Engage for Common Future believe in empowering youth to let their voices be heard and providing them with tools to become true ecofeminists. WCF is an ecofeminist network organization working with over 150 partners in more than 50 countries. We work on a whole array of topics from environmental justice to climate justice to toxic-free living. And we always have a human rights and gender just look at everything that we do. So just last month, we launched our Climate Justice Toolkit for Youth during our Climate Justice Meets Young Feminists Spark event. The toolkit provides accessible explanations of climate change processes such as the UNFCCC, because let's be honest, who isn't confused by all the abbreviations and all the technicalities of this process? So this toolkit really breaks that all down and also offers hands-on information about how youth can get involved into climate action. But besides that, the toolkit also provides information on the link between feminism and climate action, because having an intersectional feminist approach to climate action is key. Because as we know, not everybody's hit as hard by this climate crisis. And women are specifically disproportionately impacted by climate change, and are also not heard enough during climate change negotiations, as are youth. So to name just one example of how exactly women are disproportionately affected, is one staggering statistic that women are 14 times more likely to die in the case of an extreme weather event. And one of the factors that plays into this is the fact that women lack access to early warning systems for climate disasters. So having one of these or not, or having mobile internet or not, is actually a matter of life or death. But also gender roles play a huge effect in how somebody experiences any crisis. If I'm looking at the corona crisis in the Netherlands, where I'm from, it was largely women who were staying at home to take care of children and also taking care of sick ones. So it's always important to have to look at a crisis not in a silo, but have a look at how people are impacted differently and how we can uplift them. So talking to the young people that were present at our youth events, my main takeaway was that youth are ready to fight for justice and are ready to fight for issues that don't even directly affect them. They are interested about issues that affect all. And we call them young feminists to get acquainted with climate action, and the other way around, we try to involve climate activists and tell them about feminism. We have common struggles, and one conversation at a time, we're building the ecofeminist movement. And this message on the need for intersectional feminist climate justice is one which we also brought to the climate march in the Netherlands, but also in Glasgow, walking as part of a gender block. And it's also a message that I'm literally wearing today because as the Women and Gender constituency, we have a color campaign going on. We are wearing these masks. You might have seen them all around Glasgow. And WCF, there you go. Are you kidding? Yes. Amazing. I don't know if you all saw that, but Jacobo just pulled out one of the masks from a different day. But today, actually, the color is pink to highlight one of our 11 feminist key demands. And today, we are wearing pink for intersectional feminist climate action. So if you want one of those new ones, come on by. But besides talking about youth engagement, as an engaged youth myself, I feel obliged to stress the real worries that myself and others face who are not able to be here present at COP. The good news is that many solutions already exist. And I'm not talking about net zero, not about nature-based solutions or nuclear energy or other false solutions that distract from the need to acutely stop with fossil fuels. I'm talking about real, local, gender-just solutions, as exemplified in our Gender Just Climate Solutions Award ceremony just last Monday. I'm inspired by women such as Toolkit Jane from India. She's one of our award winners. She invented an innovation called Bubru, and it's a rainwater management technology that has been developed with the help of women farmers, building on local expertise, and that reduces the risk of climate change. And these are the sort of all-round projects that need funding. It's not about unjust carbon offsets projects. This is really what it's about. Because how innocent nature-based solutions and planting trees might sound, it's not. Large tree plantations have to be built somewhere, and I know it's not in the backyards of Europeans. These tree plantations are at risk of competing with food production, can lead to land grabbing, and destroy savannas and other ecosystems. And besides that, trees take years to grow, and we have about 7 years left before we pass the 1.5 degree global warming target. We can't wait for trees to grow. Because there's so much work that needs to be done here at COP, not in 9 years, but right now, we need real emission reductions at this moment. And we need to do so in a just manner. It should not go to the detriment of the rights of local women. And to get technical for a tiny little bit, one thing that needs to happen at COP is about Article 6, the inclusion of language on respecting gender considerations. This text is still in between brackets, meaning this might not be included. And it's essential that this text gets out of its brackets and takes its rightful place in this outcome. So there's much to do, not in 9 years right now. And all of this change needs to happen by hearing all the voices. So that includes Indigenous people, people from LGBTQ plus communities, BIPOC people, youth, women. They should not be forgotten, but actively included. And personally, I feel like youth are ready to stand up for intersectional feminist climate justice. So I would implore you all to be ready to.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for your inspiring contribution, and we'll get back to you in a few minutes, I think, with a second round. And you're definitely right. We cannot wait trees to grow. We cannot wait 9 years. We have to act now, and governments have to act now as well. And that's one of the main core topics, I would say, of this COP26. But now I would like to jump geographically to another area, as we said that we are devoting this space to voices from Europe and beyond Europe. So I would like to hear from our friend Mavuto Banda. If you're ready, Mavuto, hello. Please, the floor is yours. Where were you 9 years ago?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? That's great. I'm great to be here. Thank you for having me here. 9 years ago, I was already working in the climate change adaptation frontline. From the part of the world where I come from, it is very difficult to differentiate between climate change adaptation kind of work and development, because poverty and climate change effects are like they go together. For example, I also have personal experience to climate change impact. I come from an area which is both a flood plain. Almost every year it floods. Water that falls literally every part of Malawi flows down that area. And at the same time, most of the times we have droughts in the area and the temperatures are so high. So if you grow food away from the river, it is very unlikely that you get something. At the same time, the communities that are close to the river, the main floodplain, they will lose their livelihoods through floods. From the practitioner's point of view, what I've noted is that the youth have taken a leading role. It doesn't matter whether the youth in school as well as those that are out of school. What I've noted is that we had a scenario at one of the primary schools in southern Malawi, whereby 2 school blocks were, their roofs were blown off by winds. And then there was a youth club that approached the government office, that is the Department of Forestry. They wanted to plant trees around those school blocks. But then the Department of Forestry is severely understaffed. At the very same time, they don't have resources to respond to that. But then, because we were working hand in hand with the Department of Forestry, the Department of Forestry approached us, and we had to come in and work with the youth. They planted trees around that school. Of course, the fast growing species around the school, that was around 2018. Now it's almost covered. But at the very same time, what got me very interested was that apart from planting trees around the school, they also had another land where they planted trees. When they planted trees and the trees started growing, they started now thinking about what are we going to do around our woodlot or the mini forest. They started thinking about how can they generate income from that. And then they thought about beekeeping as a way of that can go hand in hand with the tree planting, the woodlot, but they would also be able to get some funds or get an income from that through the beekeeping, and also use the funds to expand their work within the community. So There are three main things that I have learned throughout the past 9 years. The first thing is listening to the people on the ground. We have to listen to the people on the ground, the people that are affected by climate change. Rebecca talked about women in our country. Women are vulnerable. If you talk about access to education, less girls have access to education and they are more vulnerable. 80% of our population live in the rural areas, and most of the people, they are poor. There are programs that target women. For example, we had a program on financial inclusion, because access to banking in the rural areas, banks, they would want to make profits, so they wouldn't go to the villages and have their banking system there. But we had to find a way of having financial literacies and financial inclusion within the community, targeting women, training women to be engaged in various types of businesses. At the very same time, we are also surprised that some women chose raising tree seedlings as a business, you see. So it's an economic, it was an economic kind of program, but also the people thought about climate change issues, and there were some opportunities that they would sell some tree seedlings from their groups. At the same time, we can listen to the people. One thing I found very difficult is that most of the work around climate change adaptation and women empowerment, gender issues, most of the times these programs are funded by donors, foreign donors. It is very difficult for foreign donors to understand the context into which these projects are being implemented. It is good to understand, to listen to the communities. At the very same time, also listen to staff that is on the ground, because each and every day when they go to the field, they will come back with, they will learn something new. If they try to communicate that to their superiors and put it into reports to the donors, donors should be more flexible to respond to emerging issues that are coming from the communities, that are coming from the staff on the ground. Apart from that, I've also learned that collaboration is very important. No one organization, no one stakeholder can implement programs that can effectively, holistically empower communities and build resilience within the community. So we can tap from resources from other organizations if we are working together and there is collaboration within that space. The third thing is coordination. I think we have made some progress around coordination on activities on climate change, but we also have some space to learn and also to improve around coordination, so that duplication of efforts can be reduced. We can save resources, we can save time, we can save effort that can be reinvested in other areas to continue empowering the people and communities. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Maputo. And that's exactly one of the goals of this kind of events as well. And goals that we hope somehow to reach, to empower people who perhaps are already somehow involved in activism, in some sort of activities, but are also willing to know more and to listen to diverse voices from very different backgrounds and very different contexts. And in terms of activism and in terms of young people actually watching this side event from home or from work or wherever they are, I think that we have two very special speakers this evening, and we're not really using this kind of superficial events together with the UNFCCC, the European Union, or in this kind of context to have actually a direct link with a school, as in this case. So I think that our next two speakers will have plenty of stories to tell us concerning their activities and the projects they have been involved in. So I would stop here by leaving the floor to Mulai and Terna from Belfast. Please go ahead.
9 years ago, I was 7 years old. My life was My Little Pony, Disney, and Barbies. Climate change was not on my mind. I'm Molly Hughes. I'm 15 from Belfast, and I go to St Dominic's. I've been a part of the Send My Friend campaign for 2 years as a campaign champion, and I'm passionate about education for all.
My name is Tierna Hoy, and I live in Belfast. I am the Send My Friend campaign champion.
Send My Friend is a UK-based coalition in international development, non-governmental organisation, charities and teaching unions. The aim is to bring together young people, politicians, teachers, civil society and the media to work together to demand and achieve quality education across the globe. Every year, the campaign works on a particular issue, engaging thousands of young people from across the country to engage and empower them to create positive change. The international community has committed to ensuring inclusive and quality education for all by 2030.
I got involved with Send My Friend to School campaign because I believe that education can provide stability to children who are displaced, open up paths out of poverty, reduce the likelihood of conflict, contribute to a healthy planet, and is vital for long-term growth.
In school, our plans during Send My Friend's campaign focus in 2020 was the right climate to learn. Whilst recognising that there are many incredible global youth campaigners for climate change and education, I was struck by the fact that Greta Thunberg was 9 years old when she started her campaign, and we are now 9 years on, and it is only now the politicians look like they might act. We cannot wait another 9 years for change to actually start to have an impact. Climate change is impacting education now.
Nearly 40 million children a year have their education interrupted by natural disasters and subsequent disease outbreaks following the extreme weather events. Climate-related disasters are the single biggest cause of international displacement over the last decade, forcing over 20 million people a year from their homes. That's roughly one person every 2 seconds. Unless the learning crisis is addressed, more than 750 million young people in low and middle income countries will not have the skills to participate in tomorrow's economy, and 1.5 billion adults in 2030 will have no education beyond primary school. Girls, especially adolescent girls, are particularly vulnerable. Girls are at an additional risk of being pulled out of school to alleviate domestic burdens such as fetching water. Twice as many girls as boys will never start school.
In school, our plans during 2020 to campaign face-to-face had to be put on hold due to COVID-19 restrictions. I, along with 18 other campaign champions from across the UK, were untethered and took our campaign virtually. We had to change our tactics. We encouraged our school peers to message local MPs with our campaign aims with the hope that strengthened numbers will have a larger impact. We met virtually with our local MP, Paul Maskey, to highlight our campaign and seek his advice as to how to have an impact with our locally devolved government and in Westminster. We attended virtual discussions with Baroness Sugg, Harriet Baldwin, Lord Jermyn, Kate Green, and many more.
We emailed many MPs on behalf of the Send My Friend to School campaign. We got replies from MPs such as Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, John Finucane, and Gavin Robinson promising for them to take action. We are in a unique position as we are able to address our local government stormont and impact our MPs who attend Westminster. We encourage those parties with representation in the Republic of Ireland to call on the government to take action.
I also spoke where I addressed the virtual audience of UK All-Party Parliamentary Group on Global Education, the UK-Kenya Parliamentary Exchange event, and the Global Campaign for Education's annual World Assembly for Youth Activists, about the barriers to education and why youth voice should be involved, and the devastating impact of climate change on education.
I attended the UK-Kenya Parliamentary Exchange. I spoke about the impact of COVID-19 on education. I also spoke about the digital divide and the promises of the Sustainable Development Goal 4.
In October, I attended the Conservative Party conference in Manchester with the aim of drawing attention of the impact of climate change on education and raise MPs' awareness of the issues. We met with MPs including Virginia Brickliff, Virginia Crosby, Wendy Morton, and so many more about the importance of the UK government's role in leading change at COP26, to set clear targets to net zero, to take the lead in a coordinated approach to tackling climate change and education, to commit to 0.7% of its GNI for overseas development. We also met with Alok Sharma, president of this year's COP26, in a roundtable discussion and highlighted our concerns and queried the current and future actions of the government.
We need world leaders at COP26 to discuss action on tackling the climate emergency. We need education to be a part of that discussion. We need to seize this opportunity to take decisive action to stop climate change undermining the right to education and strengthen education's role in the global climate response. We need leadership to stop climate change undermining the right to education.
We need inclusive participation of children and youth in climate change policy.
We need to be on track to achieve net zero emissions as quickly as possible.
We need high levels of investment and political support for education in emergencies to enable the continuous functioning of education systems in times of disasters.
We need climate proofing of educational infrastructure.
We need to act now.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether from home you can hear the round of applause that this speech just generated, but thank you very much, Mulay and Terna. And one of the final plenaries of this COP26 is just starting now in a minute, and I would like to have this side event, live stream broadcast on the big screen behind all these people, because they definitely need this kind of intervention and determination that you have. So thank you very much, and we'll get back to you. And I would like to ask Rebecca, before getting back to Mavuto, as there is a question for Mavuto from the public from home. But I would like to ask Rebecca first: how can we as civil society actually help linking this kind of activities with what is happening inside events like as the COPs and the G20 and this kind of international meetings, where this kind of this determination, this competency, this strong will to change everything just to make our species survive, how can we link these two words together in your experience?
Well, I mean, I'm in communications, and I think that everything starts with a good conversation. It starts with listening to people like Mulay and Terna, who just had so many amazing points, and I just want to give a tiny little round of applause here for if you didn't hear me just now. But I think it's imperative that we make these sort of processes understandable to a larger public as well, so they can also better understand what are the exact things that they can fight for. Like, we have to get technical sometimes for the best outcomes to get there. And sometimes that begins with, like I said, explaining abbreviations. What does COP stand for? Like Conference of the Parties. I saw that it was wrong on the Dutch Wikipedia website. Like it's all these technicalities, these words that make these processes hard to grasp. But in the end, it is about climate ambition, like you stressed, and it's about youth that are really the ones that are pushing this forward, and we need to amplify their voices and also the voices of others that are unfortunately missing during this COP.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And Mulay and Terna, during their speech, they were talking about local actions as well and local projects, and meeting MEPs from your constituency, from your area, other than the president of the COP himself. And there is a question from home, indeed, from Mavuto. So Mavuto, you spoke about the majority of projects being funded by NGO donors, but do you see a role for the private sector to somehow kickstart or contribute towards small-scale adaptation projects where needed, like the ones you just spoke about? Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yes. The private sector has a lot to contribute. I had a privilege to work with an organization that was, in fact, funded by the private sector. For example, the people that we were working with, they would most of the times bring ideas of development to stakeholders, to service providers. And from them, I and other organizations and other stakeholders, we learned a lot that, the communities know their problems, they know their issues, they know their challenges. I'll give an example whereby there was a certain community. When we were doing our work, they also talked about access to electricity. For example, now access to electricity in Malawi is around 12%. Only around 12% of the population has access to the national grid. And then it means over 80% they don't have access to electricity. And these, in rural areas, we are talking about education, we are talking about improving the livelihoods of the people. They also talked about, our children cannot read at night. How about access to electricity? And we talked to a number of companies who even came in to assist by providing access to off-grid solar lights to the communities, not for free, but providing some kind of soft loans whereby the community can access those solar lights and then pay in installments over a longer period of time, making electricity accessible to many people within the community. So the private sector has a lot to contribute. And, I think more and more private sector, they're understanding now that climate change doesn't spare the businesses. In fact, the businesses now are surviving on the proper adaptation to climate change. For example, I'll give an example of tea. With the change of temperatures and all that, it will also impact on the productivity of tea. So if it's a company, if it's a private sector that is involved in tea production and tea business, they have to get worried. And that is why many companies, the private sector businesses, are now coming in to invest their resources for climate change adaptation and empower rural women and communities to take that as a challenge and to take up action against climate change.
Thank you very much, Mavuto. And that's indeed also very linked, if you think, to the two topics of the subtopics of today, apart than youth involvement and engagement, which is, again, the way we do development cooperation, and at the same time, the way girls and women, females in general, could be involved in this process, where they are not yet at the degree we would like to at the moment. And definitely business and small business and the private sector at the local scale can help in this sense. But what we do expect from leaders at COP26, of course, is a strong commitments first from the public sector. Inside here, we've been hearing a lot of new pledges, promises, action plans, multilateral initiatives over these days. And to be fair, there has been a double track in COP26, the official negotiation inside and all the rest outside, which is actually contributing to reaching 1.5 and the Paris Agreement goals. So in that sense, I would like to thank you, Mavuto, also for providing some context in terms of based on your local experience. And I would like now to have a small game, and I would like to try to leave our friends who are watching from home before watching the video together, the final video, and telling you what the video is about, to express our expectations towards the end of this COP26. It's gonna finish in 24, maybe 48 hours. We still don't know. It's a huge question mark, actually. But can you please express your expectations in a tweet or just in a few words, just to see in a few days rewatching ourselves on YouTube whether we were right or whether our expectations have been met? And I would like to start from Rebecca.
Yes. Just so little words, because there's a lot that I'm not sure if I want to talk about like what I would expect. It's more about what I hope will still happen, right? It's about Article 6 that I just talked about. My colleagues are out there fighting for certain language to be included. And I would implore you all to look at the women and gender constituency demands for this COP26. And I will only fully support that. I don't have time, I think, to name all 12. I think I'm already over my Twitter word limit there. But I would implore you to look at that website and see all our demands for this COP26.
What are your expectations, Mavuto?
I think in one word, I have hope that there will be a lot of investment, especially in education or educating girls and boys in the resource-constrained countries. That will reduce inequalities within those societies. If you reduce inequalities, it will also go a long way in building resilience within the communities in climate change adaptation.
I would like to hear from Mulai and Turner as well.
We need education to go hand in hand with climate change, and we need people to realise that these are linked and that one will affect the other.
We need to have a voice. We need to have inclusive participation of children and especially youth voice in climate change.
Thank you all very much. And if we have to finish the turn the table with myself, I would say that Mavuto, I have to steal your word. Hope is definitely the word of the day. And as Rebecca mentioned, there's plenty of apparently technical issues which are purely political on the table. And we do hope that leaders inside these rooms will get to solutions and texts and agreements that somehow meet our expectations, which are, I think, the expectations of a lot of people around there as well. We saw how many people joined the climate marches in Glasgow last week from all over the world, not just Britain. And that was fantastic after 2 years of self-confinement and basically nothing happening, including climate negotiations, actually. And as a consortium, as Italian Climate Network, together with all our partners, we organized a march, which was a virtual march all over the past months, and that was called the Global Climate March for climate change. And we have been collecting videos, pictures from people from all over the world because, you know, it was impossible to gather in person, to meet in person. And we had the feeling that it was necessary to somehow show that we were marching together nonetheless, from our homes, from our towns, from all over the world. This World Climate March, in the end, somehow showed up physically in the climate march in Glasgow last week, and there were plenty of bikes with our banners and some of the pictures that we had on our website printed, and you know, for everybody to see them. And I would like, first of all, to thank all the partners in the Spark Consortium for organizing the World Climate March and to launch a short video about what just happened and what I mentioned. So, technical assistance, we can launch the video, please.
climate mesh to show that united we are better.
Act now for our future. Thank you.
Together we walk to stop climate change.
and joining communities and change makers for the World Climate March.
We have to save our planet as we have no planet B.
Well, we definitely lost track of how many people from how many countries actually joined the Digital World Climate March. And the goal was exactly to have the longest march ever marching to the COP. We were quite close to having the longest video ever this evening, but that was exactly the goal, and we didn't want anybody to be left out. And you have seen really how many actions, street actions, and creativity have been spread all around through this exercise. We promised our partners all over the world and our local grassroots organizations that we would have brought the climate march inside COP26, and through this side event this evening we made it, and we made it together with other partners and fantastic speakers who were with us this evening. I would like to thank really by heart Rebecca Hevelmans from Women Engage for a Common Future, as well as Mavuto Kambochola Banda, PhD student and climate change and development activist. And well, I would like to thank again Molai Hughes and Ternahoy, from Belfast students, and as you have heard, young activists with a bright future of activism ahead, together with their friends, together with their school friends, and the whole young generation who, which perhaps has not been able to come in full COP26 before because of logistical arrangements and costs and all the issues that we all faced to get here. We have between 24 hours and 48 hours to see how this COP will actually end. And I would like to leave you, everybody watching from home, with Mavuto's suggestion, with the hope, we all hope that issues will be fixed and ambition will be revamped somehow. Thank you again for being with us this evening, and thank you to the European Union for hosting this side event. Goodbye.